Hi crafters, it's Hand Stamped by Cheryl in Indianapolis, Indiana, and we are getting ready to make this card in my upcoming March 2024 events. And before I turn you loose on making it, I thought I would do a video to show you some techniques that will be helpful. So the first one is using the stained glass technique and or the paper piecing technique. So if you haven't done those techniques before, make sure you stay tuned and check out this video. So we'll be using the In the Moment stamp set that has been around for a while, but you can currently find it in this annual catalog that leaves April 2024. And I have a feeling this stamp set will be retiring. You can find it on page 96 over here. And there are some samples over here. I'm actually going to be casing a sample that was in the last catalog. So I just really like the concept of putting some curtains with this girl looking out the window. Now, when you come to my class, if you want to pick a different stamp set, you can do that as well. So for this one, I use the girl who's looking out into the ocean, maybe. And for the curtain, I just decided to put a panel on one side instead of both. But I have not made a card yet using this stamp set, so that's what we're going to do today. So let's get started. So here are the supplies that you'll need. I have a Whisper white envelope, or basic white, using a piece of the thick cardstock. I have a piece of vellum that, I'm not sure of the measurements, it looks like, I can get it to you later in the description. A piece of scrap, just to do a sentiment if you choose. And then this is a piece of craft paper that's just cut in a thin strip to make the curtain rod. Now for these little dots on the end, I ended up using the Give It a Whirl dies that are also current, and they have a piece that looks like this. So I'm using the largest circle there to make just some knobs at the end. Other supplies you'll need would be a clear block to go with this Kling stamp set. We're going to be using two different kinds of black ink, and I'll tell you more why in a minute, but StazOn and Memento. Then you're going to need some foam adhesive strips for the curtain rod. If you don't have these, I suggest mini dimensionals, or maybe even if you took a sheet of dimensionals and then just cut a strip along the edge. We're going to be using some markers, and to be honest with you, you could use the regular Stampin' Write markers, these three, or you can use the blends. I actually think that the regular Stampin' Write markers work the best though. So I grabbed a Crumb Cake, a Pool Party, and Night of Navy. And then you will need some paper snips for some precision cutting. And I think some scraps. So these are just some different patterns that I pulled out, some solid and some patterns that might make good curtains. So let's get started with stamping. So we're gonna start with the vellum, and vellum is like a see-through clear paper, right? And it's sort of slippery. And so for that reason, you'll be using the StazOn ink. You don't want it to smudge, you don't want it to wipe off. And so you'll stamp your image. And I will tell you that StazOn, at least my pad, but I'm pretty sure all pads, they sort of like dry up. So I would make sure you grab a re-inker and just sort of rejuice it before you get ready to stamp. Because this is just a different kind of ink, they also recommend using a different kind of cleaner. So you'll see in the catalog a specific kind of cleaner. This is an older bottle, but it's called StazOn Cleaner. And it has sort of like a pad up top that you would just sort of get it off rather than smudging this all over a Stampin' Pierce, or what's it called? Stampin' Scrub. All right, so this may or may not have good coverage, but I find that if you twist while you're stamping, you can get better coverage. And it is a little gloppy, so just be careful not to smear it. Like right here, you can see it's a little gloppy, but I don't think it's gonna be much of a problem. So I should probably have grid paper underneath me too, just because this vellum is sort of hard to see. But you'll just hold it in place here for a moment, let the ink sink in. Well, actually it's not sinking in much, but just grabbing onto the vellum. And it will stick, so you'll have to sort of peel it away, and that got a pretty good coverage. So Then with the cleaner, you'll just sort of go like this, and it gets very inky. And then from here, I would use a baby wipe to wipe it clean. All right, so I grabbed some grid paper, and I would let this sit aside and dry for a couple minutes, longer than you would for regular ink. So while that's going, we are gonna start with paper piecing. So to do that, I'm gonna switch over to black Memento ink, and then I am going to grab the same stamp that I just cleaned, and I am going to decide which pieces of this stamp that I want to be which color. And so I think I'm gonna do the book in the craft color. And so when I ink it up, all I really care about is the book image. And so I'm gonna do that sort of over here in the corner. I got it a little bit close to the edge, but it should be fine. And now we're gonna come in with our snips, and we're going to fussy cut this, as they say, which basically means there's no die to cut this out. And so we're just gonna snip it. The book will be very simple because it's like a rectangle. Now there are parts where it gets a little bit tricky when you've got like different images sort of laying over top of it, but you just do your best and you'll be surprised at how well it actually turns out, okay? So the book is gonna end up looking like that. Now for this technique, you're going to actually do everything that you want to do to this image on the flip side. So you're gonna turn it over, and then you're going to basically do any kind of coloring, which we'll get to in a minute, or piecing things together on the back side. Now, to do that, I would make sure you're using the correct adhesive. So Stampin' Up's seal is clear. It's actually got a blue container right here, but the actual adhesive is clear, which is unlike a lot of other tape runner kind of refills. But you do need something that's clear. So I'm just gonna put a little tiny bit right there where the book goes, and then I'm gonna set the book on the back side and then flip it over, and you can see that it looks like her book is brown. Okay, and actually I can actually see a little bit of the adhesive there, and if that ever happens, I just sort of like pick it up and put it back on, and sometimes it doesn't show up as much. Can you see that? All right, so now I think I'm gonna go with her pants. This looks to be like jeans, although it could sort of be a blanket going over the whole top. I'm not really sure, but I'm gonna just pretend that those are jeans. And so I'm gonna pull out a solid blue strip, and then same thing, come in, just stamp where the jeans are. And then cut those out. And again, it's a little hard to figure out where her jeans end, but if you just commit to some line, it will still work. Like that could be the start of her socks, I don't know. But if you just decide that's what you're doing, and then put some adhesive down. Oop, I did it on the wrong side, oh goodness. So I had to grab my adhesive remover. This is a square that you can sell, you can find at Michael's, and it's actually cut into fourths. That way, someone on our team gave one out to a bunch of people. Now, these are great for removing adhesive. The only problem we have here is I used, you know, an ink on vellum, which might be susceptible to smudging, but it looks like this is doing just fine on the vellum. So that's why we use StazOn. But this is getting off the adhesive that I put on the wrong side. So yeah, all good now. So we've done her books and we've done her jeans. And now I'm trying to figure out what to do next. Let's move to the stained glass technique, okay? So for this, we're gonna put the ink away and we're gonna just move to coloring. And like I mentioned, I think the Stampin' Write markers work best. And I am going to, I think I'm gonna do navy for her socks. And so there are two ends on this, and so you'll probably want the brush tip. And again, you're gonna be doing it on the back side. And so you're just gonna come in and you're gonna color. And it actually looks sort of bad. And that's okay, because when you flip it over on the other side, it looks beautiful, like stained glass. So it's sort of, you know, I've never really done stained glass, but the idea is when you know, do it up close, it might not look as good, but when you hang it up in the light, it looks very pretty. So you can see here, you can add color to her socks. All right, let's pick her blanket. I'm gonna do pink on that. I grabbed Flirty Flamingo, and this one I'm turning over. And then one technique I like to use is always putting Pool Party sort of around. The idea is it sort of looks like just a element of making it pop, right? But it could be the sky if you're outside, but in her case, she's inside, but it doesn't matter. It still just looks a little bit more interesting. There's no precision to this. You can just sort of do it the way that you want. You can do her hair, you can do the dog. You can basically decide how you want to do this. I'll do the dog and crumb cake. I'll leave the little mouth area white. Just come down here. And Stampin' Up, you know, has skin tone markers. They come, I don't know how I can't remember how they're sold, but there are 10 in the complete set. They're numbered 1 through 10. So if you wanted to do her skin, you could choose which colors you wanted. Same thing with her hair. I think I'm gonna leave all of that out. However, I am gonna color the coffee cup. Same color as her socks, so hopefully they don't get confused. Okay, so I left the pillows white, but I think this just sort of adds a little bit of interest by doing two different techniques, the paper piecing and stained glass. So now it's time to put this down on the card base. And so same thing with the adhesive. I would suggest using just a Stampin's seal. Just put a little bit on the back. I'm gonna center it here. Okay, and don't worry if it's popping up over here because we're gonna be putting the curtains on the side. So for the strip, actually I'll tighten that up in a minute. I'm gonna grab some foam strips. And just sort of eyeball it to how long you might want it, and then rip, and then set it down. And should be good. So just gonna set that there on top. Oh, didn't pull this off yet. Okay, and then for these little ends, the curtains, I should be using glue dots, but I don't have any right here, so I'll just put on some regular adhesive. And you might need, I probably should trim my curtain rod down a little bit, but for sake of time I didn't, so these little circles don't stand out as much as I might have wanted them to. Okay, and then for adding curtains, so look, it looks like I smudged some ink. And let's see if my ink eraser, this is another product you can get on Amazon. Oh my goodness, yep, I'm smearing it over here as well. These are called Tombow Mono Sand Erasers, and they are amazing at getting ink off. What it basically does is sort of eats away at your paper, but without like leaving, like you can't tell. And to be honest with you, I probably don't even need to be doing this because curtains are going to be covering it up. But because it was sitting right here, I thought I would show it to you if you haven't used one of those before. Now for the curtains, you can decide if you want them on one side or both sides. So this one I did on both sides. And as you can see here, I have two different panels on either side. That was an accident. So at first I cut these shorter ones and then I realized, oh, they weren't long enough. So I put the longer ones on, and then I said, well, I hate to throw away the shorter ones, so I just sort of double layered it, and I think it works because curtains sort of bunch up like that. So I'm going to take another pattern here that might be good for curtains, and if I were being precise, I would probably trim it with a paper trimmer, but I just go for it. Eyeball it. They're curtains, right? And that's too long, so I'm going to go like this, and then once I've gotten one that looks like it fits, I'll just come back over here and do a second one. Now in the other card I did, I actually put score lines on it so that it looked like it was like pleated. So that was a technique that you could do as well. And I'm just gonna leave it just like that. Now for these, you can use the foam strips again, or you can just come in and use regular dimensionals. And I like to just sort of use the ends for something like this. So as long as you're covering up the edge of the vellum, that would be ideal. Isn't that so cute? Really not difficult, but it makes it fun to sort of customize it based on how you want the curtains to look or what kinds of clothes she's wearing. Okay, so for the sentiments, there's one that says, "You're in my thoughts," which seems to go with this one. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is relax, which seems like it could go with either of those. And then a longer one, "You're always so good to others, be good to yourself too." I think I'm gonna try and fit this one in there. And so usually at my classes, I try and give people, if I can find it, a larger piece of white so that they can pick and choose which, there it is, which sentiment they want. And if you want a completely different sentiment, you can always ask me too, and we can go look on my shelf or check my database. But we're gonna just stamp this one with Memento on this piece of paper. And as you can see here, it's too big for the card, and that's why I just love trying to manipulate things by using my scissors. I'm gonna just cut this word relax. And I think like that is how I want it. On top of the curtains. Okay, and then we'll see if I can fit the rest of it in a way that doesn't block it too much. But I find that if you just use the snips and you trim it down, I mean, you could do it like this, but you could also get even more, you know, you could cut it even more. So let's try doing that. gonna try and come up like here. Now I would probably use, because that's a little bit underneath the curtains, I'm gonna use, and this might be too detailed and intricate for, you know, what you want to do, and that's fine. You could just quickly stamp something on the inside too and not even worry about the front. But I put the foam strip right there. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is relax. Isn't that the truth? I've been feeling that way lately. I've just been stretching myself a little thin lately. Okay, so I'm gonna put that one right here. So you don't put it underneath the curtains because the curtains are already popped up. Productive thing you can do. And this one, I don't know, do I want to go on foam strips? Probably, because everything else is, right? Foam strips are great. I use them primarily for shaker cards, but every once in a while they come in really handy for something like this as well. So you just want to sort of get it underneath, make sure, because I cut it so thin. All right, so here we go. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is relax. So what do you think? Which of these is your favorite? You'll have to comment and let me know. And if you're in the Indianapolis area and you want to come make these, pick one, you can, or stay tuned, because very shortly Stampin' Up's going to be announcing what is retiring from the annual catalog before the next catalog comes. So you'll want to check out the last chance list. So thanks for watching and happy crafting.